Well, hello there to all my Substack followers and subscribers, those curious and investigating this page. I'm Scott Spradlin. It is a cold day in Kansas, and so I'm celebrating by wearing my beanie during this video. And I am recording this video in the world headquarters of Wise Mind for the Distracted Mind, which is DBT for Adult ADHD, a program of Wichita DBT. And incidentally, this also happens to be the world headquarters for uh, Wichita DBT and North Star Therapy, which is the home of all of it, where I co facilitate our DBT programs with my wife, clinical social worker Mariah. And we are also co authors on a forthcoming workbook from New Harbinger Publications, which will be out in July of 2026. And of course, we're going to invite you all who have an interest in DBT and or DBT for adult ADHD to take a look at that. It's available for pre-order on Amazon presently, and so you can get in on the action there and check it out. And we're very excited about that book coming out and the support we've received from our publisher, New Harbinger, but also from some other colleagues and friends who have been instrumental in helping us get that developed. And we'll talk about them later. Right now, what I wanted to do was to start us in a kind of moving along in a little bit of a series, which I'm going to be calling from our DBT for adult ADHD manual, which we use with clients and are in the process of refining. And this is for those of you who are in the know about DBT, this, of course, is material that will sound familiar to those who have been trained in or who participated in DBT from the assumptions about clients and treatment agreements and the skill sets, everything from core mindfulness to emotion regulation, from distress tolerance to interpersonal effectiveness. There's not a lot that's new there, but there is a lot that has been adapted to meet the myriad nuances of the ADHD struggles, including looking at the nature of executive function impairments, which are also looking at possibly not to be too soft about it. As an ADHD adult, I'm okay referring to my executive function challenges as executive function impairments, which are basically lie within neurobiology and some wiring differences that make attending and self-organization and screening out distractions a little more difficult, not impossible, but difficult. But today I wanted to share with you some material from the treatment manual, not the workbook, not yet. We'll be sharing some of that along the way. Also, my intention and goal is to develop more regular content so that you will have something to come back and look at that will hopefully be edifying and useful and practical, and also to keep in mind for those of you who aren't here for uh, continuing education as a professional. I want to keep everybody mindful to the fact that this, of course, doesn't replace your physician or your local licensed practitioner, mental health practitioner, whether it's a psychologist, social worker, or counselor, to work to make diagnoses and also to render treatment. So this is not a substitute for treatment, but think of it as kind of adjunctive education. This is really done for educational purposes. There's some legal mumbo jumbo for you, my disclaimer there. So thank you for understanding that. Um, so as I produce more content on a regular, I want to make it worthwhile with more content. I'm hoping then that your subscriptions and your following our Substack will be beneficial to you and it will have some value. And hoping that we will win over more subscribers along the way as we develop a program, the Substack program here, as I sip from the mug of willingness, pardon me. Mm. Remember, start with yes. um, and we also are on a soft launch, by the way. Incidentally, we're on a soft launch for a fundraiser for my youngest stepson. who is a soccer player, and he is raising funds for himself and his team so they can take up this opportunity that they've been given to travel to Manchester, United Kingdom, for a tour and train with some local pros and learn about the iconic soccer city. And these young guys who are basically 11 and 12 years old will be having the training opportunity of a lifetime. And I and some of their adults and parents will be going along with them, of course, as chaperones along with their coach. So I bring that up by way of saying we will be offering to subscribers some opportunities to uh, use your, if you're thinking about subscribing financially, like if you want to do a paid subscription, you can make that to make a donation to his travel efforts, and we'll use that amount toward your paid subscription here. So as we paywall material here, that will give you kind of a double dip, really. You'll get the good feel vibes about donating and helping out the team get to Manchester. They will be leaving in April to do that. So that's why I call it soft launch too. It's also pre-holidays. It's kind of a hard time for me anyway, to ask others to, pitch in on a donation when they're donating to other causes. And also it's the holidays, so there's travel and food and in gifts and all those things. It's kind of an expensive time of the year for a lot of us. So I don't want folks to feel impinged upon. Would that be the word? Imposed upon for sure. And so the invitation will be standing, not obligatory, of course, but we would welcome that. And so there's a couple of things we're working out there, which we'll, I'll articulate more clearly in some following videos. But to want to give you an opportunity to get both a paid subscription for the material we're going to be paywalling um, while you support the soccer effort. So thank you in advance for thinking about that. You should watch it. So let's get on with the content here. What I want to do with this video here, we're going to be looking at, again, pulling from our treatment manual as it is right now. We orient our ADHD adults, of course, to the DBT model. And we'll get to that. We'll get to that part. And how do we do that? Um, but we also want to orient our ADHD adults and others, loved ones, and professionals to orient them to a model for understanding the radical impact that executive function impairments or or executive function vulnerabilities have on ADHD adults' ability to self-regulate and to engage in consistent goal-oriented behaviors, whether it's for the needful task of paying taxes or work duties, family duties, but also in carrying out personal labors of love, hobbies, learning music or languages, or collecting something or building things or acquiring new skills, for fun hobbies that often go abandoned with a lot of ADHD adults. So it's not just that there's trouble persisting in, things that a lot of us would probably frankly say, oh, it's boring. I get it. Why would you want to do that? But also along the lines of things that are really deeply important and often are even elements, maybe it's art, things that call out to be born in our playfulness, and that doesn't happen. So even there's some difficulties, which are very important to quality of life and what we call life worth living. So we're going to orient, well, let's just use this time right now to kind of share with you, um, on the one hand, misconceptions about ADHD and then facts about ADHD. I also just want to qualify this by saying I'm not a know-it-all, and I hope I never come off that way. There are those who are much more expert than I, but I am presenting material and facts to the best of my knowledge, which make the most sense from the best what I would consider and what I'm kind of gathering from others who are in the field, the most dedicated and best materials, clinical resources, research on ADHD, not just popular culture stuff, really trying to get underneath that. So let's go ahead and get on with it. I'm gonna overqualify this to death, and you're gonna leave. Okay, so we're going to go through a few misconceptions about ADHD. One misconception about ADHD is that everyone has it. Everyone has it. Maybe you've heard this before. I've seen it on various social media, folks' blogs, this kind of thing. Of course, we all have ADHD, and this may be attributed to often, we have so many digital distractions. We have all the social media platforms. We have online gaming. We have news feeds. We have Reddit. Don't want to pick on Reddit. But we have all those sort of things. We also have gambling and pornography and all kinds of things that are drawing our attention and really conditioning us to be, very distracted, and to that really ping on our attention and our dopamine, and really clouding and cluttering the field of awareness for all of us. And this has been a growing problem for humans for a long, 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 long time. That's a discussion for another time, and we will discuss it down the road. um, but that we all have increasing number of distractions in the world that can compel our attention to the point of even a form of addiction, or neglecting uh, presence for spouse, family, friends, and so on, and just having a sense of self recollectedness and self mastery is not the same as having ADHD, because ADHD is, in fact, a constellation of executive function impairments or vulnerabilities in which the neurobiology that's built into us has certain variances, which produce difficulties or contribute to difficulties for ADHD adults, not just in paying attention to something in particular, but also with respect to screening out things that are irrelevant to tasks or play that are relevant to us, or that we want to, treat as relevant, or to lose sight of our values and to be more impulsive in our thinking. And sometimes the thinking is kind of cloudy, very difficult to sort thoughts out. Sometimes. Um, It's also difficult to screen out what's happening externally around us. This is very difficult for a lot of ADHD adults. Mm. And I also just want to say a qualifier along this too is that we are not not cookie cutting this. So my particular difficulties and struggles with ADHD are similar to most adults with ADHD. And some of us have more, sort of higher severity of impairment or higher acuity in difficulties. And of course, that can change from context to context because there's contextual factors involved in this. And this is something we'll get into along the way here. But not everybody has ADHD. Everybody probably has increased problems paying attention, but not everybody has executive function impairments where they have impaired working memory, both verbal and nonverbal, or difficulty with regulating, or say the activity in their anterior cingulate, which is related to upregulating emotions and paying attention, but also with a prefrontal cortex activity that's so critical to not only being attentive, but also selecting action, for purposeful, goal-directed behaviors. And it's important to know this too, especially for our ADHD adults, because if everybody's got it, it's no big deal. We kind of just need to get over it, right? And that's a form of invalidation. So now we're bringing in some language from DBT. DBT posits difficulties for a lot of folks who have various biological vulnerabilities that they interact with environments, or environments, whether it's a family of origin, or schools, or wider culture. And so I'm going to say for the ADHD adults, why we have these discussions in our groups, and on an individual level, it's that this invalidation is also, it's really permeated popular culture. It's kind of in the ether, and we're all breathing it in. Yeah, everybody's got ADHD, so I don't know, I don't really have a problem. So even though maybe I've come to therapy and I'm undertaking DBT, and I'm beginning to work with Scott Mariah on this. It's not uncommon for our clients along the way, making progress, learning mindfulness, learning how to even act upon their environment, so the environments are more supportive. Their environments are more supportive of their uh, self-regulation and fulfilling their task and daily, like with scaffolding and the externalizing methods and all those sort of things. They will, weeks into treatment, sometimes even months into treatment, come to us and say something like, "I am not doing XYZ. I don't know if it's me or if it's my ADHD," as if the ADHD is a separate entity. Um, so it's important that we look at these things to say, well, not everybody has ADHD, and by the way, yeah, of course you are not following through with that, but let's not diminish that. Let's not invalidate or what's the word I'm looking for here? I can stick with diminishment. Let's not diminish the radical importance of the executive functions in everybody's lives and the radical impact that executive function impairment makes on ADHD adults. That can be very self-dismissive. And so therefore it's like, well, I don't really do anything. So I'm going to sit around and kind of think about like how I should be more motivated or I should be more moral and, these sort of things. But that then bypasses the frankly very mundane, unfortunately, mundane yet again radically important, and I'm using those words intentionally, by the way, radically important, although mundane practices such as keeping a planner, using a day planner, externalizing important things you need to remember, sticky notes on the refrigerator with the mirror, connecting with others, whether it's a spouse or a family member or friend or coach or therapist, say, I'm going to need help remembering certain things. Let's figure out how to do that. And abandon the idea that many ADHD adults have that I should just be able to remember all the things coming up this week. And I should be able to remember the somewhat distant important deadlines coming up a month and a half from now or 2 months from now. I know I know certain things come up. Maybe it's studying for a class for college. Yeah, yeah, okay. The test is gonna be in January sometime. So it's only December 2nd. So I got time to study. Already, there's a minimization. The time to study, of course, is right now, right, to get started on that, and then to work various tools to make that happen. Because what's going to happen most likely then is you're not going to remember, and you're going to forget, and then you'll have a last moment, last ditch effort, all night study session, or if it's another kind of task, then it'll be that last like, oh, I got plow through for 12 hours and get a bunch of stuff done. Whew, pull it off and oh, what a relief. That feels good. I did it. And then we're left with these beliefs like we're really good in a crisis. Although putting off, the build up and all the necessary steps up to that deadline time, that would save us from having to be in the crisis in the first place. Okay, so not everybody has ADHD. Another misconception about ADHD is that it's a kid's disorder. So even if you have it as a kid, as you become an adult, you'll outgrow it. You won't need to be worried about it uh, anymore. And that's just all I can say about that is it's just simply not true. We don't age out of ADHD. I think maybe there's a little tiny bit of literature that shows that some adults mature in a way for whatever reason, and I probably shouldn't even bring it up because I don't really know the details of it. But some folks, they don't seem to have complicated problems around their executive functions. Maybe they're minor, or maybe they're in environments where there's kind of low demand and there's not that many moving plates. Maybe they're still in circles, friendships, or families where there's a lot of shared support and that kind of thing. So it looks like it went away. But for the most part, and I'd say probably for most of us, you don't outgrow it. And so I'm going to take a Russell Barkley approach on this one and say, because we don't outgrow it and because we're more or less stuck with it, we need to make sure that we're taking it very seriously. And that's why we want to undertake something like dialectical behavior therapy to address that and to engage in relationships that are also supportive and give us scaffolding and accountability to do those things too, or to become more skillful at mitigating the executive function impairments and the things that we tend to struggle with when we're you know trying to figure out how to work our our calendars and our demands and jobs and so forth, right? But we don't outgrow it. So not everybody has it, and not and ADHD adults don't typically outgrow those struggles. Again, with prefrontal cortex, anterior cingulate, working memory, verbal and nonverbal, um, and also being able to upregulate emotion and dopamine toward tasks that are in fact relevant in the absence of something that would stimulate our dopamine otherwise. um, and by the way, I know there's also been a lot of media coverage, at least I'd probably say the last 10 years, at least that I'm aware of, compared to folks like Russ Barkley and Russ Ramsey and others. I'm still a newcomer to this. I've really only been doing a deep dive on ADHD for about 10 years now. Been with practicing DBT for nearly 30, but wanting to just recently in the last 10 years becoming more um, focused and involved in studying the neurobiology and the science behind ADHD and different working models on executive functions and so forth. But um, there was a lot of talk in media also about, well, where are all these ADHD adults coming from? Why did this is the reason why folks think like, oh, everybody's got it, because there's been this explosion of new cases, and we'd have to really kind of parse out that data. Maybe we can return to it. I'll probably post some videos, actually links to works of Russell Barkley, who does a great job of parsing out the details of these, stories of misinformation, including from the New York Times and other sources that really get ADHD wrong and, unintentionally, most likely misrepresent the science behind it all. But there's not really like an explosion. It seems like there's an explosion. But when we become better at diagnosing particular problems that have always been there, that are latent, well, it sure seems that way, right? But again, the overall population of adults, it's not huge. Again, it's not everybody's meeting criteria for that. It's a very select few, but it's a lot more, and in parts because there's credible evidence and assessment tools and practices that show that folks do not age out of ADHD and that it carries with them into adulthood. And it really, most times, it really needs to be treated. Okay. ADHD only happens to men and boys. Well, I don't have stats in this one or anything like that, but it doesn't. It happens to girls also. And it also happens to women. So, same story. Uh, Executive function impairments are present among some girls. I don't have the numbers on how many, statistically, what's the estimation between boys and girls and then men and women. Just know that it actually is a thing for women to have executive function impairments, and to contend with those and need tools to mitigate those executive function impairments. ADHD was recently made up. I'm going to conflate a couple of these actually. um, well, no, I'm going to touch on this one real quick here. Um, the ADHD was actually just kind of made up. It's just a kind of a made up thing. Now, it's the term ADHD. That's a label. It's a nomenclature to describe a cluster or a constellation of um, problems that are kind of shared across populations and people that are common. Just like say the word schizophrenia or anxiety or depression. That nomenclature is there, and we'll say that it's an unfortunate nomenclature in a way because it has all of us giving our attention to the word attention. Can I pay attention or not? I can pay attention to video games, but I can't pay attention to my homework. I can pay attention to, some hobby of mine, but I can't pay attention to being home on time to have dinner with the family. And it's really, again, this whole idea about it's more of an executive function disorder or syndrome, if you will, where and it's these executive functions interact with an ever-changing environment. So, it's become called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. There are reasons for that. And of course, I think with the idea of attention in that language probably made a lot of sense when the DSM committees were coming up with that terminology. I think it's probably something that's not really understood by a lot of us nowadays in the common culture. But attention and a focus in awareness, presence, all these sort of things, there's some pretty specific meanings to those words in terms of what does it mean to be attentive, and how do I activate my attention, or how do I move my attention? How do I, let my attention broaden and just sort of, become diffuse and wander about? My attention is not just in my head. Also, it's also, it's a head, shoulders, knees, and toes kind of thing. So it's important that we know that so that we can work with ourselves, head, sorry, head, shoulders, knees, and toes, so that we can effectively, more effectively mitigate the challenges of the executive function impairments. But ADHD is being recently made up. Back to that. See, I kind of wandered away. It's probably about, if I have it right, it's been in the psychological literature for nearly 100 years. Maybe it has been 100 years. It's been discussed with different kinds of names. We go back to William James, one of the fathers of early American psychology, talks quite a bit about attention and difficulties that some uh, persons show in regulating their attention. But he also posited that we can learn to train and work our attention purposefully, and even increase it in some ways. So we can certainly do that. And there's a whole discussion we can have later about, like, what is attention? What is it? What does it mean? We'll do the same with motivation also, because that's another word that we often misuse or misunderstand. But it wasn't recently made up. It's been around for a long time. It's just that presently it's evolved into being, carrying that label of attention, of ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which encapsulates just ADD in general. There's no ADD versus ADHD. ADD is an older, you know, conceptualization of it. If you say one or the other, basically talking about the same thing, with the exception of when we get into the diagnostic nitty gritty, we want to see if we can do differentials with folks, find out if they have a predominantly inattentive type or predominantly hyperactive type, or if they have a combined presentation of both. So a lot to it, but it's something that's been around for a long time. There is a lot of scientific literature and about what we now call ADHD. So it's nothing new. The pharmaceutical companies didn't make it up to sell stimulants to us or anything like that. It's been around for a while, so it's really important that we know that. And also knowing this helps us to counter what um, helps us to counter the invalidating messages from popular culture that seep in and say, yeah, it's all made up. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. ADHD is not a real thing, or you're an adult, you shouldn't have it. That's why we cover these misconceptions. um, Poor attachment relationships in childhood cause ADHD. This is under our list of misconceptions. Um, per evidence that I've looked at, not looking to, of course, I mean, I didn't set out to find, I'm aware of the confirmation bias, but, a healthy attached relationships are super important for all of us from the moment we're born, and all through our life, in terms of having a quality of life, having a stable sense of self, having interpersonal, emotional, cognitive resources for problem solving, and living a life worth living, having that quality of life. But as cause of ADHD, we don't really have, out of all of that literature that we're pulling from, those of us who come back and look at it, and again, I'm pulling that from folks that do that hard, deep, long, and earnest, and diligent work, that its attachment does not cause ADHD. It can certainly, if there is a poor attachment or anxious attachment, um, we have anxious parents or chaotic environments within which an ADHD person, uh, grows up and is shaped by that. That will potentially compound difficulties for that person. Perhaps feeding in some insecurities or difficulty connecting with relationships over the course of life, and maybe, and even compounding problems regulating emotions and so on. But it's not the cause. And there are those out there who are really quite famous and influential who are saying things like, it's all trauma. Um, and it's not trauma either. There may be cases where somebody has executive function impairments as a result of a traumatic brain injury, maybe from sports like football, or being a victim of violence, or being a veteran of war. Maybe you were affected by a IED, something like that. Perhaps, but in general, there's just a high heritability, and that's one of our facts about ADHD, is that no trauma necessary in order to meet criteria for ADHD. Lots of folks don't experience trauma, and there's probably a whole big debate that some folks would have about what constitutes a trauma. But again, that's probably another word that might be misused sometimes. So that might be a discussion for later. But that's not what causes ADHD. Um, and ADHD, I'm going to close on this one here. ADHD is an excuse for otherwise destructive behavior like laziness, forgetfulness, selfishness, etc. No, it is not. Like we tell our clients, because especially the adults, if they're in relationships, they have a partner, they're married, they will often say, after being diagnosed, they're trying to figure out how to keep promises that they make. They're trying to figure out how to, mitigate some of their, you know, habits maybe they develop that are undermining their quality of life, their trustworthiness, their even just their self-respect. And when they learn about ADHD, from us, other sources, and throughout the therapy, often say, well, my wife or my husband says that I'm making excuses for myself when I say, like, I forgot to do something on the way home. I'm sorry, like you're supposed to get milk on the way home. Oh no, I didn't do that. Oh man, my ADHD. That's just simply an acknowledgement that most likely you made the error of not writing it down and making it external. So you went home, and because you thought in the moment, like, you got it because you want to and you mean it. I'm going to bring home the milk. But on the way home, I don't get the milk. Not because I'm selfish, not because I'm immature. It's because I made the mistake of trusting my memory. That I'm going to hold on to that, and I'm going to keep it in my working memory long enough, coming in back here, and I'm going to put it up there into that prefrontal cortex of mine where I do the going. Back here's the knowing, up here's the going, and I'm going to make it happen. But then before I head out to go home, where I have the opportunity to go get the milk on my way home, I have a couple of phone calls, have a couple things I've got to do at work. Uh, Maybe I watch a couple of YouTube videos or something. It just could be anything. It could be anything at all. And so now you have other thoughts, and now your attention has gone elsewhere, and you didn't write it down. So oh yeah, I want to get home on time for dinner. So you're even thinking, I want to see my family. I'm going to go see my family. Go, oh no, you don't have the milk. It's not an excuse, but it's a reminder in those moments to say, this is exactly why you have to write it down. Exactly why mindfulness will be very helpful for you. And this is why acting upon your environment in a way that your environment supports you to follow through with promises big and small, get the milk, Okay, I get the milk. What am I going to do? I'm going to write it down somewhere. I'm going to put it something in my phone, or ask, if it's my spouse, say, hey, honey, would you text that to me? And that way I have the text, right? Because maybe I have a habit of checking text before I, leave work, and I'll see that and got it there. And then I can enter it into a calendar. Or maybe I could get in the habit of saying, hang on, honey, let me put it in the calendar and give myself a reminder before we hang up. Leveraging that moment of relational accountability, the friendly accountability. The milk is important. I want you to trust me that I will follow through on this. The family needs milk. Milk is a stand for anything, right? Then we'll do this, but I have to do that because of the executive function impairments. I don't want to add another dropped item, um, that will be another what? Another piece of my self-respect, being trampled or extracted from myself because I didn't write it down, I didn't follow through, and then being told I'm just being selfish. If I say, "Oh man, my ADHD, I should have wrote it down." Oh, there you go, making those excuses. Yeah, you're right. I'm just making excuses. I'll get it together. Eh, you know, you will make mistakes. By the way, none of this. By when we get down the road here, you're going to find out we're not promising folks to be absolutely, ironclad, consistent 100% of the time. I don't know that anybody really is. Maybe there's a few of you out there that are like that. Um, but in the words of Russell Ramsey of CBT for ADHD fame, says, we can expect with ADHD to be consistently inconsistent. And this is where the dialectic will come in handy, and we'll get to that later. There's some facts about ADHD, and we've been going now for a little while here in this video. So if you've hung in there, good on you. Thank you for sticking it out. Uh, Facts about ADHD include, the first thing is we say it's highly heritable, meaning it's essentially influenced mainly by genetics. It's in there, it's part of your hard wiring, and it's a little bit askew, and it doesn't work like some other people's executive functions work. And if we can get square with that, then we can then apply appropriate mitigation strategies through DBT principles and practices. It's also best understood, and I've already been saying it a lot, so here I go being all super redundant. ADHD is best understood as a constellation of executive function impairments, EFIs. That's what we would call them, EFIs. Or, if you like, and I'm playing with this again, I don't want to be coddly about it, but I also don't want to be, I don't know, overly dreadful, but thinking about really executive function vulnerabilities, perhaps, what all is going on around us. But it's neurobiological in nature, and all it does connect us with the world around us. So the executive functions are both part neurobiology, part skill. So it's a bio environmental combination sort of thing, and we may have to really lay in some heavy skills to compensate for those executive function impairments. Okay. By the way, ADHD adults have shorter lives than their non-ADHD peers by anywhere from 10 to 15 years. That might be kind of conservative guess, but folks with ADHD tend to have uh, less quality of life, and they tend to have shorter lives. Lots of reason for that, such as this next fact that ADHD adults have a high risk for obesity and other health problems. Um, Bad habit, being impulsive, and what we eat, lacking the motivation, in the absence of being motivated by friends and environment or other habits, and scaffolding, maybe not exercising, and maybe strictly in a chair a lot, which we're all at more risk for being in a chair, which is why I'm on a standing desk right now, by the way, because sitting is killing everybody. You probably know this. But there is a well documented health crisis associated with adult ADHD. It's really pretty horrendous. Another reason to take it very seriously for ourselves, those of us who are ADHD adults, and then also for those people who do love adults with ADHD, and those providers among us who are working with folks to, become more effective in living, more skillful. Their very lives may depend on it. definitely quality of life depends on it. ADHD adults are at increased risk for all kinds of behavioral addictions, controversial term, whatever. I'm just using it for right now. Nomenclature could change, but there is a kind of a tendency. There's a higher vulnerability to becoming, pathological gamblers, or also doing likewise with online trading of stocks. Immersive gaming, which we're not going to say that that's inherently bad, but it's something that really pings hard on dopamine factory. Tends to have a very kind of a low physical effort, high brain reward ratio. Building skill in terms of running missions, and maybe you're playing Call of Duty or Valorant or Rust or something like that. um, it's fun, it's exhilarating, you learn the rules, you do all kinds of stuff, you have teams, there's a social component to it also. There's a lot about it that we could probably say is very commendable. On the other hand, it's so easy for that to become excessive, especially for ADHD adults. So this is not like a video game's bad kind of thing, but be careful, be mindful. That's why folks come for therapy. Okay, so what else about that? uh, Also, pornography. That's another one, or just being online too much. Online shopping in general, mismanaging money, impulsivity around not being in terms of the moment, not screening out the ideas or the dopamine pinging devices of the internet, online shopping, the games, pornography, and the gambling, in a way where they can be recollected and present to their real values and principles on how they want to live wisely, uh, so they can experience love, meaning, and connection, but also living in such a way in the present moment that they're kind to future self. That's a big problem. How are you going to feel 5 years from now? We don't know. I don't know how I'm going to feel in 5 years, but I know now that I'm 56, looking back on my life and my own ADHD struggles and the way it's really worked against me. um, I take responsibility for those ways in which I did that. That was me doing it, of course, but learning about the executive function impairments and then pairing those up with the DBT skills helps a lot in terms of being able to continue to turn myself, and I'd say those who take this up can turn themselves back to their values in a given moment, learning to resist urges and learning to kind of disconnect from every little thing that pops up and not being as reactively attached to certain thoughts or ideas, and being able to come back to remembering, like, what is healthy for me: water, vegetables, decent food, stay away from processed foods, so and so, all the stuff we know, right? That we know. um, Go to the dentist, brush your teeth, floss. A lot of ADHD folks have dental problems, and dental problems aren't just cosmetic problems. They can become life threatening and contribute to coronary problems and coronary events, or cardiovascular events, I should say. ADHD adults tend to have more frequent divorces and relationship problems. Yeah, I know this one here. Not going to get into the details here, but I will say uh, I was married for 12 and a half years, and that failed. I failed that. And now I'm, after whatever 15 or so years of being single, I'm now married again with a whole different perspective, different commitment, different set of skills, and being able to bring that into the relationship. Also, I have a partner who having similar problems. Her ADHD is different than my ADHD, and sometimes they don't quite match up. And maybe we'll share some of that humor with you later, because it does get kind of funny. There's some funny stuff about ADHD, but there's a lot of really scary stuff too. And that's why we're going about these facts here, so that folks know, what are you dealing with. This isn't just trifling. When you forget to use your day planner, for example, just saying, "Oh yeah, I forgot to use my day planner," and then well, what happened? Well, then I didn't go, I didn't go work out in the morning, and I didn't take the dry cleaning and drop it off. It's still rumpled, crumpled up in a corner in the bedroom or something like that. And I forgot to bring the milk home, and then that I had a fight with my partner. I felt bad about myself, and then I felt angry, and all things like, yeah. So this is really a big deal. It's not like, oh, well, I just forgot to do it. It's like, no, every little moment that you have within which you can activate your attention and your intention. So where mindfulness training comes in handy from DBT, uh, you're becoming more skillful, and you're being kind to future you, and you're also being, you're caring for and cultivating your life presently, including all the relationships around you that you have, whether it's few or many. But anyway, yeah. So there's all kinds of problems that folks have. So we need to work on, but take it seriously. Don't be like, oh well, I spend a little much here and there. There is a balance between compassion and personal accountability. And we'll get to that later too. But it's important that we do take these things very seriously. This is what we're up against, and there's a lot of immense private suffering that a lot of ADHD adults undergo, also, which we should talk about another time. ADHD adults tend to have employment problems. I already said they have financial problems sometimes. So if I have trouble bouncing from job to job to job, and I can't keep an income coming, I could upset a partner. The stakes are bigger, right? If I make mistakes, then the consequences are more colossal. Failing to turn in a term paper as a high school junior, uh, if that's a result of executive function impairment, that's you know completely different than I'm not making a mortgage payment, right? I'm not. I don't have enough money to feed my kids. I'm not saving money for my old age because I'm not thinking about old age. Even if I have something to save, and so that'll create tensions with partners that can contribute to corrosive dynamics within relationships, that can contribute to divorce and so on, but also increase stress, which then might lead somebody who's not skillful with their ADHD, and they may fall into smoking cigarettes, drinking too much alcohol, using other drugs to deal with their anxiety and so forth, eating poorly and so forth. Oh, here it is. The fact about how long has ADHD been around in the language. I did write a date down after all. Since 1775. Huh. I better check that. That's older than the United States, isn't it? Okay. So I'll make sure to confirm that. If anybody's watching a video this long, let me know. Um, ADHD meds, such as stimulants, are among the safest and oldest known treatments for ADHD. And period. Stimulants are uh, safe. I have been taking stimulant since I was about 30 years old. Tremendous help. It doesn't do skills for you. It does. I'm going to steal from Russell Barkley here for a moment, where he talks about medication as a prosthetic. So, for instance, I take a form of Adderall. I hope that's okay to say out loud. But it's very helpful. And just like I'm wearing glasses right now, I take these off. I'm nearsighted with stigmatism, right? So when I put these on, everything's clearer. Everything has more curvature to it, more spherical, like we should see with our eyes. Now, this doesn't cure my eyesight. It is something that helps me to see with more clarity. It's a glasses are prosthetic. That's what stimulants are. They're prosthetics that help us see more clearly, so to speak, that help our executive functions work better, to help our brain process more with blood flow, but also processing our dopamine in a more efficient kind of way. And then you still have to file your taxes. You still got to do things. So there's this is a both and. So but the stimulants aren't things that are just made up by pharmaceutical companies, where they're twirling their villainous mustaches, like looking for ways to rip off the public. No, they've been around for a long, long time. They're super safe. I think there probably are indications for certain people that maybe have pre-existing cardiovascular issues. Probably shouldn't be taking them. That should be a topic for a video down the road, and I'll also post some things from other sources on that, so we can all be wise about that. But on the whole, super safe. There are non-responders who don't respond to certain medications. So if you're going to attempt to augment your treatment with medication, you want to look around for you can still try out some other things. There's methylphenidate, right? That's Ritalin. There's also a whole bunch of new stuff that's come out that's Non-stimulant that does work for some folks. Sometimes Wellbutrin, as an antidepressant used kind of off-label, can be helpful for executive functions. I have some clients that's what works for them. And then some folks decide they're not going to use medication. They're going to just go free range, and then they just really work really hard at their skills, and they want to deal with that. But so everybody's got the right to decide what they want to do with or without medications. But just know that they're safe. They're not what some people think they are. Another fact is our ADHD adults can mitigate their executive function impairments and vulnerabilities with skills. That's the whole point of taking up DBT. Or, if you're out there and you get cognitive behavioral therapy, there's some really great ADHD informed approaches to that. Do that, but you can, in fact, mitigate those. You can improve your quality of life. You can improve, your follow through. You can improve overcoming. I don't know if improving overcoming. You can become more skillful at, say, reducing the frequency of procrastination. May still happen, but you have new tools for doing otherwise, and strategies for kind of shuffling things around in a way that doesn't undermine your quality of life or your reputation with yourself or people that love you. ADHD adults may benefit from supportive and understanding spouses, partners, friends, family, employers who can assist with environmental scaffolding. I said may. You can. I should change that. Actually, I'm shooting on myself. We absolutely benefit from having partners who understand. My wife is amazing in that way. She's frustrated with me sometimes. She is honest, and she will give me the feedback at times about how I may have moments where I'm not taking my ADHD very seriously. Maybe I'm not using the calendar. She calls that out. So that's accountability, and it comes from a place of love, and understanding. So with mindful self-awareness, I realize I affect others around me. I don't have to get caught in a pit of despair or, get stuck wallowing in how terrible I am or immature or whatever. I can just look at the problem and go, that is a problem. Thank you for giving me that feedback. And now I'm going to do otherwise. And here's how I will make a repair in the relationship. I recommit to, engaging in the various practices and tools we need to be effective. So anyway, there's there's kind of the meandering. This is a much more meandering than I would do probably in a DBT group, kind of unpacking some of these points, and they're kind of parallel to one another. Maybe sometime I should do a video where it's like, here's the myth, here's the fact, pair them up. But thank you for watching this far. I'll be putting out some other videos soon, and my intention is to make them shorter, probably more like a 20-30 minute range. I think if we do longer format stuff, it should probably be in a dialogue or a live format so that others can interact with us. But you're all very gracious. Again, thank you for watching to the end. Send feedback, private message, or feel free to comment. If you're a follower or subscriber, I think you're able to do that. This will be on the free side of things for a couple of weeks before it goes behind the paywall. So again, thank you for watching, and just ask you all to be mindful out there. And I hope that you're loved and well fed.